Everyone, this is Justin, and welcome back to Beyond the Lights. This week, we're diving into part 2 of PSI Games, and I couldn't think of a better way to have this episode than to invite Ryan Desbien on himself to talk about the competition, his experience, and what it was like being the back-to-back Psychokinesis Champion. So, welcome, Ryan. How's it going, dude?
Man, it's so good to be back on the show. You know, I love you, dude. You're just such an amazing man, and dude, where do I even start? I'm not going to give the whole backstory to the personal part of the PSI Games, but man, just being able to hang with you and Austin, our buddy. I know he doesn't like to have his name shut out there, so this is the only time I'm doing it is on our show because I think he'll appreciate it. But and just Heidi and all the people, all the experiences we had at the house and stealing Corey's orbs, and then just hanging out, man, and meeting everybody, and dude, it was so good. But PSI Games 2026, man. Dude,
Yeah.
what I'm going to just start at the beginning if you're cool, and we'll talk about the games and just my experience of it, right? I'll try to see if I can put some competitors on. I know I got at least a couple that want to be on the show, and they can talk about theirs, but man, so I had the original testing mechanisms that they had from last year that we actually used until about April. I forget exactly if it's not April, if it's like March, or if it's like May, I forget exactly when they switched it over, but we had an original testing platform that we used last year that we had till kind of a later moment this year, right? And so then once we got our kind of hey, you're being considered, retest on this platform, it was really, really good. It's Akeem's PSI Games Online. That's how you tested into this year. What's funny is that, the same people that tested really well on that original platform of testing were the same ones that did well on the new platform, which probably is just one more thing, just kind of verifying it was the right group of people, right? Man, the competitors were just as voracious this year. Last year I think it was just about getting the word out about what it was and showing people the capabilities of what certain people have, right? And to show that we all could do it, right? And that with time, energy, and effort, the heart matches words, matches actions. I love nailing that one in, but to show that you could train these abilities. We've been training people on these abilities both through your YouTube and our star watching events, stargazing events, and it's just been this experience, man, of helping people. And the more that I lead with love, the more that you lead with love, the more that we combine our, experiences and, Dave and Kari, and just, I'm going to get into that later, but man, it's just, this whole year has been training, but training others as well, and training myself to be accepting of myself. You were talking about your your kind of dude, yeah, I'm getting all emotional. I just got these amazing texts from people that said I was just really nice guy, and they were so inspired by me. And now I'm trying to talk to you, and it's kind of inspiring. So give me a little bit of grace here, people. But just,
deep breath.
Dude, it just was life-changing. I think you had the same experience, man. That's what I'm going to say. And, there's been a lot of opportunities that came from it as well. I'll get into the actual games here in just one second, but I had to tell you my emotions about it first, man, because that's been overwhelming the last week. And then there was the testing afterwards, which I'll talk about, which is just as amazing of an experience as the PSI Games, but potentially more profound. And I'll kind of talk about that. But so PSI Games 2026, man, we have all the vendors. I'm just going to give the background, walking in as a competitor, I saw a bunch of the competitors on Friday, but not everybody was in. Everybody was in by Saturday morning. We're all kind of expecting to do the same categories that we knew what we were going to do. Once again, nobody knew what the games were going to be before we walked in, just like last year. So no contestant had any sort of advantage over the other. Things that I had been training to all year that about, the pegboard and the colors and training my hands and just doing everything I could. We did a very similar thing, but with more pegs, and we had to do a pattern with multiple colors, not, it'd be the equivalent of the same 6 colors, but having to do 10, or I think maybe there's 6 or 7. There's a higher amount of pegs with a pattern with these colors. And man, the straight honesty, and once again, I'm a straightforward dude. The blues and greens messed me up. The purples and reds messed me up. And I got 3 of my rows, or 2 of my rows. I forget exactly. I was kind of just in the moment. I think it was maybe 2 of my rows completely correct, a 3rd row that was mostly correct. And then I just kind of fell apart. I even pulled one of my things off because I realized I ran out of the right color of peg, so that means I messed up somewhere. So what I had done is I had actually created 2 of the exact same peg board. So I did the exact same thing side by side, and I realized what I had done after the fact, and you're in the moment, you're just moving, right? And so, yep. So that was my experience for the original part of Mindsight.
And like,
We're all still sitting in our, go ahead.
I'll show the video of it too, because the card you had to look at was so small
So
as
tiny.
well. So like, yeah, no one knew going in to that competition what that was going to be like, and it was literally reading a stack of colors off like a index card, you'd say, like 3x5
Yeah.
maybe.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
you're not
So
only trying to visualize the card, but then you're having to manually like do this process, which is the test. Which, dude, here's the reality. I think the game was amazing, straight up. I mean, it did all the things like I wanted to prove in Contact of the Desert, that you could do symbol recognition, you could do pattern recognition, you could do all the right things. I just wasn't the fastest, man. Straight up. Just didn't have the jazz hands going, you know what I mean? But shout out to Austin again. But like I personally think it was a good game. I think it
gotcha.
just proves to me that I need to work on my color recognition with the places I know I'm weak. And man, I'll even kind of get into that a little bit again later, but just Mindsight was so amazing, so I did not make my cut. I did well. Once again, I got an amazing result, showed that I'm above average. There's no way that like you would statistically come out with like that, level of it. And there's many of us, that did so amazing, just didn't make the cut. They only gave out first and second this year. There was no third. So it
Yeah,
was
which
basically the first and second. So that was one difference, just so folks are aware. Last year they did give out third place. I think this year they only did top 2, basically a bracket kind of thing is the way I would look at it.
yeah, and which I want to say, all the competitors did so amazing. Everyone did so good and so incredible. It's a competition. It's who can do it the fastest. So, I mean, that's just kind of how a competition goes. And it's something when you're really like, when I include the footage, everyone will see, but you had to pick up these tiny little pegs and stack them on those pegs in that certain order that you're trying to read off a tiny little flashcard. That would probably be hard even with your eyes to
Dude,
distinguish which column you're actually looking at.
Dude, meat paws and those tiny little peg little button things. I could grab those cone, like those donut looking ones, right? Because they had mass, those little tiny bead things. I just was having a hard time picking them up with my big meat paws, dude. So just, it is what it is. And shout out to Sheila. Dude, it came
Yeah,
down
Sheila
to a
killed it.
head to head, through breaking it down. So they did not do teams, it was all individuals. So you still had people representing like Monroe, you still had people representing Consciousness Connection and Training, and Lights Over Loveland and Colorado 369
Yeah.
and 1000 blindfolds now. But you had people from Monroe, you had many people from Vision Without Eyes, and I think there is still some census people thrown in. I just, it was such a good vibe, right? It was such a good amount of people. Everybody could produce. It wasn't, we're all doing it in the same kind of, strict thing where you have a camera on your station, you have multiple cameras on you. Each, you have the big panning cameras, you have the individuals walking around, you have guys like you from different angles, and Corey and other media folks. So, there's no getting around what was happening, right? And so shout out to Sheila and Sugar. I I can't say anything else, but man, Sugar did an amazing job. It came down to him and Sheila. Sheila did her just fun dance. She got into that kid, that childlike attitude, just tried to get the vibe of it. Man, nailed it. It was such a good moment, right? And there was so much emphasis put on Mindsight this year. I just do want to say that, like, Axel did a little mini demonstration on the kids panel. Then in addition to that, they had, more Mindsight right before the side game started with additional kids and, practitioners, and just a lot of Mindsight. So I hope my only critique to that was I think a lot of folks, wanted to see a lot more of the games, right? They came to see people do extraordinary things. One of the things I heard kind of from a lot of different podcasters that I've been listening to their stuff was that, it was a lot of talking, a lot of the presenters and stuff, but then just kind of minimal on the people, that are producing, right? And not only did we kind of have to wait, we got split into 2 days. I'm not gonna lie, Justin, that actually worked out to my advantage.
Yeah.
I had Bojangles the day before, got sick. man, bad mistake, but had to follow the kiddo's lead and kind of was just not myself. I actually wore this shirt, but it wasn't my race jersey. I just wasn't focused. And once again, I just want to say Sheila won with it being behind her head, right? She got the right color from behind her head in the mindfold facing the opposite direction with everybody with their eyes on her. So just another shout out to Sheila. Well done.
That was such a cool moment too. Like everyone just exploded in cheering when she got it right too. And yeah, just her tapping into her inner child and doing that dance up there. Like that was definitely a special moment of the competition.
Yes, 100%, man. And it's so cool to get to know Sheila and her husband who come to a lot of the stuff. And man, it's just good people, and they show it. You can just feel it, right? And then, then we had, what was the second game? Was it the second game?
No, actually, the first one was remote viewing.
Remote viewing.
Yeah.
Yep. So a little bit of backstory, and I'm not going to take any credit from Paula, but I just talked to Paula a few days before, just giving her little tips about what the side games look like and like how it might be run, just, based on my experience last year. And she ends up stomping it in second, which was amazing. Like, it was so good to just, have another person that I just had like a moment of connection with do so well. So cool. We met each other through weird technologies and these connections through my connection in England of all things. It's just these weird synchronicities, man, that are just constant now. And so shout out Tammy Haynes. And Tammy, I just have to give a little backstory to Tammy too, right? Because Tammy I knew from last year. She was a returning champion from last year. Tammy won the remote viewing, so Paula got second. Tammy won. Her husband was also perceptualist. We were playing these dice games from this super cool dude we met named Terry, who was also a competitor, who won Precognition this year. And man, it was just such a cool group. And shout out to Tammy, man, you're good people, and your husband, you're good people. Man, it was so amazing to get to share this with you. And we're all going to get to go to England. It's just going to be so good. So remote viewing was set up in a similar way. It was actually done by Social RV.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm the word.
Yeah.
Right? Dude, this is how my brain works. So if anybody wants to know, it's direct processing in live. But Social RV came up with the remote viewing techniques. They were using stylists to write on a board. They would write their emotions. They would try to take out their analytical overlay, all the stuff we talk about at our sky watching events. It was so cool to get to see everybody, producing that as well. It was really well done. There were some people in the audience that were playing along, as you can in the side games, and it was so good. There were some people that were pretty hot, is what I'll say. So that was amazing. So that's Mindsight, and that was remote viewing. We'll talk about Psychokinesis because I'm gonna.
1 second. I want to say on the remote viewing, I thought that was really cool how Social RV was able to include the audience to do it as well. So I was actually doing it on my phone in between, and then I'd go back to recording. So I like stuff like that where the crowd can get involved and feel like you're a part of the games as well. So I don't know if they can incorporate that into other games, but I think that would be a really cool thing moving forwards if they could do that.
Dude, shout out to Social RV and Hakeem in the side games. That was a good collab for sure. That was amazing. And there's another collab that I'll talk about with Psychokinesis, which is what we did first thing on Sunday, man. I wore my race jersey. I wasn't trying to promote myself. I was just trying to be in that heart space with my son. Man, I'm just going to give my perception of it, right? I knew coming in that I could do it under glass. I can do it under multi-panes of glass. I've done it on podcasts. I've done it showing the entire process. I've shown that I'm pretty sufficient in that. Shout out to Egely Wheel. I now am sponsored by Egely Wheel, and we'll be doing some stuff with their live WER and doing some promotion for them and doing some other classes for them. I'm one of their spiritual makers. If you want to get an Egely wheel, use code Ryan50 and you'll get $50 off your purchase. Just going to do a shameless plug because I want to, and they're an amazing product.
Totally. Yeah.
Dude, so we did it in a lab box, a plastic lab box that was not only caulk sealed, like you would use for like a sink, that clear caulking that you would seal stuff with. And then they had tape around it as well, just to, prove to everybody they were, sealed in. Everybody saw the sleeves went up this year all the way to the wrist. No air movement inside this box, right? And the goal would be to use your energy, create that positive and negative, feel the spokes of the Egely wheel and do your thing, right? Second year winning with the Egely wheel. I've been in touch with the Egely wheel once again. I now have my Egely wheel, plugged into the live WER. Basically, once again, I can show my live results. People can actually do it along with me. So like we could do like a 2-minute session where like we're trying to go left for 2 minutes, just like we do in our trainings. People can actually do it along with me live, see my results, try to match me. It's pretty cool. A Egely wheel is such an amazing device. I do have a sticker on mine. I'm lights and stickers. I like doing my stuff up. But once again, the Egely wheel is like a vitality meter. It's what we use to do psychokinesis. It picks up macros. Psychokinesis, you know what I mean? It's basically an energy sensor essentially between your hands. Kind of the beginning, straight up the beginning stages of what people might call telekinesis, right? It would also be kind of the beginning stages of being able to learn how to control that energy to influence random number generators. So first game was the Egely wheel, killed it. I was so happy because they did 2 games for that. And I'll kind of go back in like a recap of things that were missed out on, but we got to do both games for psychokinesis on Sunday. So it came down to me and Heidi on the Egely wheel. And man, I know that I train with her and you've seen videos. I think you've even sat in on one with her. And to have it be me and her that it came down to, dude, like that was just as powerful as anything because it meant that everything we had done over the last year was what it needed to be to get to that level. And it came down to me and her and, it was just so good. And then, dude, I'm the luckiest dude ever. The second game is influencing random number generators through Social RV. Social RV actually created this game in less than a week. It was so good. Shout out to Social RV. You guys are so good with what you do. But they came up with a game where you would influence a random number generator to depixelize an image, right? To make the image become clear compared to very pixelated, right? And so basically the goal was to draw energy one way or the other. Very simple. Man, if you can do it, you can affect how often, the Wheel of Fortune hits on those spin machines. The same way, you can kind of give yourself that extra little boost when you need to make that jump. You know what I mean? And I was so lucky to have that be what the second part of psychokinesis was. I'd held that. I just want to talk about it, man, because I feel like this is a pretty unique thing. I had held the record for the original testing, which was keeping a random number generated ball in a target for a certain amount of time. And I had held that for so long till right before the PSI Games this year where they switched over, right? And I just, that same technique, I used the weirdest scope, which I was talking about on other occasions where we train to have these 2 random number generators match. And then the longer they match, it turns these different colors. It's been something I've been able to train with. And man, it just shows that you can really train this, right? You can train it and get better at it. And I was just so grateful that was the second game and nailed it. And Psychokinesis Champion back to back. I won't gloat anymore. It was just an amazing experience. Shout out to Heidi and Justin and Dude You and Corey and Heather and everybody else from the house and the team and the team that were the executive team. I mean, there's just too many people to thank. All of the podcasters. This fly just came out of nowhere. Dude, letting us 2 Colorado gnarly dudes come in for Y-Files and Planetary HQ and vetted and just all the craziness that came along with it on Sunday too, man. And we'll get back to the games, but I just want to be grateful for all those experiences and the people that made those things happen. Man, it was, I'm so glad that you got to share a lot of it with me too, dude. Like, there's nobody better. You're such a solid dude. And I just want to say that before I forget to say all that stuff, because it was just too amazing to get around. And like Acid for Squares was letting Axel do all the cameras and stuff. And we got to see David Tran do some amazing things is what I'll say. And man, it was so good. After that we did Dowsing. And so Dowsing
Hold on one second. Before we get away from psychokinesis, I gotta do a big shout out to Axel because his cheering you on inspired everyone, and everyone loved that. And I have to ask, I imagine that energy definitely helped you out during the competition.
Dude, anybody that ever doubted that my stuff was emotion and that energy put me in the hot seat, give me that adrenaline with that emotional boost, man, I literally cried on stage. I mean, you knew because you were there, but the spotlights were pretty intense this year, and I got my vision stuff already, but I knew I was likely to cry if I was doing really well. I would get super emotional in the moment, and I knew that was going to be what happened. I just forecasted it a mile away, so I wore my sunglasses. But man, he's yelling, and I've got it going both directions. I see Kruth, who's one of the judges and also one of the scientists from the Ryan Institute, like with his kind of mouth open, man, and Axel's yelling, "Go, Dad!" Brandy's yelling, "Hard matches, words matches, actions," and I started crying, and it went faster, and then Brandy's yelling, "Trophies and receipts," and everyone knows that's kind of my thing with all this, and like just I got to stop and go the other direction. It was just all the right mixture of stuff, man. And thank you to my wife. I want to make sure I give that shout out too. And and Emma for taking so many pictures and just everybody, man. There was too many people, Jordan Crowder, and just there's I don't even know if I mentioned Caesar Pagan and all, just there's too many people. All I don't even know, but there's too many people. You know what I mean? It was just such a life-changing experience.
You're nearing the finish line! Trophies and receipts, let's go! Come on, man!
We did dowsing. Dowsing was pretty amazing. We would find we would figure out which safe it was by dowsing for the correct safe number, which was the first part. And there's a video of me kind of going over. I did my hand thing. I got close, but I wasn't the closest. It came down to 2. I'm pretty sure it came down to Heidi and Sharon, and I think Heidi ended up winning dowsing, and Sharon ended up getting second, which was both amazing. Sharon's the winner from last year, so she's proven she's for real. You know what I mean? She's now 2 different medals, 2 different times. There's going to be some people. David Tran did well this year in Precognition, which was the last game, right? It was actually this super cool dude that we both met named Terry that actually won Precognition this year. David Tran's such a cool dude. It's so cool to kind of see how we just do things different but the same. You know what I mean? And we kind of get to places that are the exact same place, but we just have different paths of how we get there. And just hearing his story and my story and getting to spend a lot of cool time with that guy. I'll kind of talk about it a little bit more here in a minute, if as much as I can. But I got to spend a lot of time with that dude doing podcasts and doing different things. Man, seeing Sean do his thing again on stage in front of everybody, that was powerful. That was another one of those moments for me where it was like, dude, you have to mic drop it, and man, there's so much more I want to say about that too. But to stick to the Psy Games in general, it was David Tran ended up getting second, Terry ended up getting first. David nailed these lottery ball games that were happening, which was the first competition. I did all right. Once again, I tried to PK some of those balls in, but it didn't work. Literally, dude, literally 2 were right on the edge, and you could just see me be like, "Oh my god," because it was just like a T. But I think it worked out. I think it worked out the way it was supposed to, man, because I still got a medal. We're getting to do all these amazing things, and it would have been selfish of me to have more than that, right? So I am so happy for all those experiences that I got to have, being a part of them. I'm still going to test into everything. Next year, my goal is to be into remote viewing. If you're cool, man, is there anything else you want to talk about the games? Because then I want to talk to you about something that was just as profound and is affecting all of us.
Just a little bit more on precognition. So talking about the machine and the balls popping out. So there was a lot of technical issues during Psy Games this year, and I personally believe it was just because there was way too much energy in this tiny little room, and the electronics just could not handle it. Because Hakeem even said, he's like, I've tested all this stuff at my house, and it all worked fine. But
dude, don't let me forget. You got to bring that back up in the second part.
Yeah. What did you think about the precognition, actual the game and how they did the competition? Because there was kind of some controversy at the end where David Tran scored a higher overall score, but since Terry won in the final round, Terry was the champion. So what did you think about that? Do you think they should change that or do something different with that?
Man, there's two different answers I want to give, because I want to give the answer from my heart, and I want to give the racer answer that would be more like, if you're trying to stick to it, maybe this is just how it's going to play out, right? In terms of like rules and games. And so
You're right. Yeah.
just to kind of give everybody a little bit of the backstory too, we did have kind of a pre-morning warm up on Saturday where we did find out what the games we were going to do. This is kind of the behind the scenes. I'm going to give the very, very cool, minimal version of it. There was a few more games that we never got to. One was going to be finding these chests in precognition, which I was so excited for, because once again, man, you know me, I'm good at finding the patterns. So I was excited for that, but we never got to it. There was a couple of other games that we just never got to, you know what I mean? That I think could have really been some other powerful moments. I think, there was just, it's all just growing pains, right? Like we're still learning with our events, we can't talk any smack, because we thought we were doing an amazing job. And then all of a sudden we kind of got told like, well, you guys doing this stuff? And we're like, oh, there's this whole other area that we needed to clean up, which we are, and we did. And I'm so excited to talk about that here in just 1 second too. But man, the precognition, I don't want to say, because I'm not the one that made the rules, and I'm not the one that made the decision. And, I wasn't a judge. I was just a competitor. My heart goes out to David. We talked about it a little bit too, and he definitely recognized it. On the flip side, David and I have had a lot of opportunities, over this last little bit. Be the same thing if I got multiple trophies and somebody didn't get to go because I was being selfish, right? Like, and Terry's such a cool dude, man. Terry is exactly
really
what,
cool.
if I were to picture a psychic dude that just has this uncanny ability. Dude had a dice, pack with him, and his thing to train precognition was to roll these dice and predict the outcomes. And dude, it's my psychic backpack. It's the real deal, man. When you get that dude that just comes in and it's just like nothing. Hey, and we had this whole game going at once. When we were waiting in between for one of the intermissions, dude, I do feel for David, and that's, once again, I'm not the one that made the decision, and I'm happy it wasn't on me, but I feel for David. I'm so happy that Terry got it, because he's a cool dude too, and I think it just kind of elevates that part of it too, and such an amazing experience, man. And once again, the games were so good. I'm so happy I competed. The thing that hit me the hardest, man, was the amount of impact that I've had over this last year and on people in general. And like I was saying, right before I got on this podcast, I got a text from our friend Emma, who had gotten a text to her from a fan saying just, how ever since they watched me on her podcast, they followed me. I'm such a interesting dude, and it's so, love based, and it is, man.
One thing maybe that we could talk about a little bit at PSI Games that we didn't dive into yet, just real quick, is you brought up the flow state. We didn't even talk about how during the competition you guys had the flow state behind you guys. And then maybe we can also talk a little bit about how the competition was judged and commentated on by those different groups of people.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I totally spaced all that, right? So each game had its own setup on the stage, right? So they would break it down, set it up each time. That's where some of the technical, things came in. Not that I'm trying to nitpick it, just that was the reality of it. That was the main cause, is they would get it set up, then they'd break it down, then it'd take a minute, then that's just the way it was, right? That all being said, each one had their own setup. It was the same setup as last year. So they have a front row. Front row has a designated judge section. The judges are typically scientists, military generals, or experts in the field. For instance, you have Pam Coronado and Paul Smith doing remote viewing. I mean, I think there was another judge in there too. I just forget who it was, but those are the two that I just remember off the top of my head, because those are elite remote viewers, right? You have it commentated by others from the community, other influencers. I think, it rotated every time, so the judges were different along with the commentators. A lot of these people are the speakers at the event, as well as some scientists. We had crews from the Ryan Institute, multiple other agencies, is what I'll say. Just lots of eyes, but still keeping it gamified, right? Like that's the real reality of what the PSI Games is, right? Gathering these kind of people that have this little bit extra, and then maybe, once again, kind of getting them into a place where they can show and express what they can do, right? And so each game, had 2 games originally. The judging each had set criteria, so we weren't exactly privy to remote viewing. I know I'm pretty 99% sure that Paul Smith, who's like the original the OG original, military remote viewer. He was the main. I'm sure they were using his criteria to judge the remote viewing. Once again, I don't know that for a fact, but if I had to put my money on it, Paul Smith, and you can't get any more of a known real deal remote viewer than that, and he has a protocol, so I'm sure is being judged to something similar to that, maybe with the Psy Games twist. Psychokinesis was being judged, and we had the Egely wheel inside the sealed air box, lab box. We also did the social RV game where you're affecting the random number generators. Those games are pretty self-explanatory. You're following commands, or you're trying to influence the items. That was pretty easy breakdown and setup. I'll actually say with the boxes, that one actually took one of the least amount of times. They had everything running. I forget her name, but the AI lady who announces the games and all the coolness, all the show part was working, on Sunday compared to Saturday. So that was really cool to be a part of that. In terms of the judging, it was, I'm going to just kind of float around it, straight honesty, because I don't want to put anything more, because I was not a judge. I'm just going to say,
right. Yeah, no, totally.
It's cool the way that, it was a little bit different. Everybody from, many of the people from last year got recognition again this year. And there were some new faces this year that maybe not everybody was expecting. It was just cool to kind of see it grow like that. I don't want to say anything else on the other part. Just interesting and still cool that everybody got recognized. You know what I mean? The dowsing, that was, I just, once again, I'm impartial. I trained with Heidi, and all I was thinking the whole time when Heidi was on stage, Heidi made all 5 games. Shout out to Heidi Maynard, who qualified for all 5 games. I'm the only other one that qualified for 4. I think there was many people that qualified for 2 or 3. So it was just real cool to have those honors, to just have that kind of core group have, so much success, right? It just, once again, I'm not trying to take any training away from Vision Without Eyes. Heidi's been an amazing person with Vision Without Eyes. Shout out to Rob and Antonio and Austin and all the folks with Vision Without Eyes. I'm not trying to take anything away from that, but I can guarantee you guys were not training Heidi the way I was on the Egely wheel with crazy rock music or music that I made that's just nonsense, and or timers and lasers and under glass or under 2 panes of glass. And it just was so amazing to share that with her and Carol and just you and Austin, man. It's just, and Sarah Crowder, who jumped in a few times with us, was there, and Jordan, and just all of it, man. It's just, it's all connected too. That's why, when I talk about one thing in this, realm, it's you can't just talk about one thing, because it's all these synchronicities that line everything up. And it's just something I've never experienced in my life prior to being a part of it. You know what I mean? The love, man. Feel free to do a montage. Justin, please put in a montage right now of all the people we met, because, man, that's what made Psy Games this year, was all the people.
I mean, if you saw my previous episode of Psy Games,
you
saw it literally made me cry. So, yeah, it was definitely a life-changing weekend. I definitely recommend, if you get the opportunity to go to Psy Games next year, go, because the people there made the event so special. And everyone was so cool. You could talk to anyone and they would just talk to you for however long. I had a 30-minute conversation with Jordan Crowder about the triangle I recorded.
Dude,
and
he's such a cool dude.
Yeah. And getting to talk with Acid for Squares and the Bledsoes and so many different cool people who are just so authentic. They're just really trying to figure out what's going on. And that's what I also really love. Bringing up the science earlier, we didn't even really talk about, but the way Psy Games kind of started out was they showed us all the science first. So they really talked about, when you're doing Mindsight or minimal light perception, these different brain waves that are activating within your brain. And then they did different tests to okay, let's put pinholes in the mask and see how that impacts the brain waves. Now let's
showing the diagrams along the way.
Yeah. And really showing people that it's not just something, there are ways to document and measure these things. And they even said, we don't understand what's going on, but these results are intriguing. We need to study them. It's proof that something's going on that we don't understand. And that's what I really loved, how they went into the science before showing the competition. But yeah, I definitely think I also want them to focus more on the competition next year as well, too. I'm glad that we hit that real quick because I just wanted people to know, like, the people judging the competition were experts in each field as they were judging, and the commentators were also people who look into it and research into each of these different topics. So I thought they
Some
did
being
really,
skeptic.
yeah, also being skeptic. And like, I enjoy that. I enjoy when there is that skepticism as well, too. I like when people can, not everything is magic and rainbows. There is these logical things that explain a lot of things, but as long as you just have that possibility of what if this is possible, I think that's key for studying all of this stuff. And, yeah, skepticism is welcomed. It's why we need to be skeptical when we're studying these things scientifically. And that's only going to create better data and information that we can use down the road for trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Dude, this fly. It was so good. I'm just real. There's this fly attacking me. It's like attacking my face. Dude, it was so good. I mean, everything about it. Let's just be real. Our friends are what made it. My family, Axel cheered his heart out, saying the super kind words on the stage.